Aaliyah Brooks pushed through the gold ballroom doors with both hands and shouted, "Sir, my mom cannot get up." The HOA security man grabbed the strap of her backpack before she reached Ethan Caldwell. Her mother's inhaler case, phone, and emergency clinic badge spilled across the marble floor. Outside, the West Service gate stayed locked, blocking the only clear ambulance route to the hotel entrance. The gate tablet still showed Monica Brooks as the permit holder. That was what the guard did not understand. Crystal glasses froze in the air. A violin note broke halfway through. Warm candle wax, perfume, and expensive steak filled the ballroom. Ethan turned from the donor table with a silver fork still in his hand. His face tightened first with annoyance. Then he saw Aaliyah's shaking fingers pointing toward the glass wall. "My mom is in the car," she said. She tried to stand up, but she fell back. The guard pulled her backward again. "This is a private event." Aaliyah twisted toward him, small shoes sliding on the polished floor. "Please." The word barely came out. It still reached the room. Someone near the ice sculpture lowered a champagne flute. Another guest stepped back from the dessert table. Ethan did not move for 1 second. Then his eyes shifted to the items on the floor. The phone screen was cracked but lit. A missed call flashed across it. Then another. The clinic badge turned face up beside a pearl-white napkin. Monica Brooks. Mobile Care Coordinator. Aaliyah saw him read it. She also saw something change in his face. Not pity. Not yet. Recognition almost, but not enough. "Where is she?" he asked. The guard frowned. "Mr. Caldwell, we can have staff handle this." Ethan looked at him. The room went colder without the temperature changing. "I asked the child." Aaliyah swallowed and pointed toward the terrace doors. Outside. Near the black car. She could not breathe right. Chairs scraped behind her. Guests began whispering. The string quartet stayed silent with bows hovering above the strings. A woman in a red gown covered her mouth. The HOA man bent down and picked up the clinic badge like it was evidence of trespassing. She came through the service entrance. "Because the front gate would not open," Aaliyah said. "Mom had the code." The guard looked at the gate tablet near the welcome table. The red warning light blinked again. "Service access pending. Permit holder confirmation required." Ethan saw it too. His jaw tightened. "Open the gate." The guard hesitated. "Only the assigned permit holder can approve emergency access." Aaliyah looked toward the glass. Her mother's car sat under the hotel lights with the driver door still open. One heel rested on the pavement. One hand hung against the seat. The sight made the ballroom stop breathing. Ethan set down his fork. Slowly. Carefully. It clicked against the plate louder than it should have. Then he walked toward the terrace doors, and everyone followed his eyes. The terrace doors opened and cold night air rushed into the ballroom. I followed Ethan Caldwell outside before I even realized I was moving. The sound of dress shoes against stone mixed with the distant splash of the fountain. Behind us, guests crowded near the glass wall. Nobody returned to dinner. Nobody touched their drinks. The black sedan sat beneath a row of decorative lights. The driver door remained open. My mom was still inside. Her head rested against the seat. Her breathing sounded uneven. A faint whistle came with every breath. Ethan reached the car first. He crouched beside the open door. For a second, he simply looked at her. Something held him there. Something I could not understand. "Monica," he said quietly. There was no response. The HOA guard finally arrived behind us. His radio crackled. "Emergency services are delayed," he said. "The west gate is still locked." Ethan stood. "Then open it." The system requires permit confirmation. The guard pointed toward the blinking access panel near the service road. Red light. Red light. Red light. Ethan stared at him. There is a woman struggling to breathe 20 yards away. The guard swallowed. I understand, sir. But nothing changed. Another red flash blinked across the access screen. I moved closer to the car. My hands shook as I searched for the inhaler. Empty. The plastic case felt too light. Mom used the last one this morning, I whispered. The words barely left my mouth. Ethan heard them anyway. His eyes shifted toward me. A small hook caught his attention. Then another. How long has she been working today? He asked. Since 6. I looked down. Maybe earlier. A siren sounded far away. Too far away. The sound faded behind buildings. The fountain kept running. The ballroom lights reflected across the hood of the car. My mom's clinic phone buzzed again on the passenger seat. Ethan picked it up carefully. Missed call. Missed call. Missed call. The screen displayed messages from elderly patients. Transportation requests. Medication reminders. Home visits. Ethan scrolled silently. The glow from the phone illuminated his face. Another small change appeared there. Not sympathy. Recognition. The ambulance siren grew louder. Finally. Guests behind the glass shifted forward. Several had their phones out. Others simply watched. The HOA manager hurried across the courtyard carrying a tablet. Sweat covered his forehead despite the cool air. We found the issue, he said. The permit account was flagged this afternoon. Ethan took the tablet. Flagged by whom? The manager hesitated. The pause lasted only a second. It felt much longer. Administrative review. Ethan's eyes narrowed. For a medical access permit? The manager looked away. Another hook. Another question. Nobody answered it. The red gate light finally switched green. The metal barrier lifted. The ambulance rolled through moments later. White headlights swept across the courtyard. Paramedics moved quickly but calmly. One checked my mom's breathing. Another asked questions. I answered what I could. The rest blurred together. Oxygen tubing. Medical bag. Quiet instructions. Professional voices. The smell of antiseptic replaced the scent of flowers from the gala. Ethan never left. Not once. Even after the paramedics loaded my mother onto a stretcher. Even after the crowd began drifting back inside. He stood beside the ambulance with his hands in his pockets, watching. One of the paramedics asked if a family member would ride along. I will, I said immediately. Then the clinic phone buzzed one more time. Ethan glanced at the screen. His expression changed completely when he saw the caller's name. The caller name on the screen was not a patient. It was not a family member either. Ethan stared at it for a second longer than anyone should. Then he handed the phone back to me. Keep that safe, he said. The ambulance doors closed. A paramedic motioned for me to climb inside. I grabbed my backpack and stepped up. The metal floor rattled beneath my shoes. Cold air flowed from a vent above me. My mom lay still on the stretcher. Oxygen hissed softly beside her face. Ethan remained outside for a moment. Then he surprised everyone. I am coming too. One paramedic looked confused. Another recognized him immediately. Nobody argued. The ambulance pulled away from the hotel. Red and blue lights flashed across buildings and parked cars. I sat beside my mom holding her hand. Her skin felt cool. The city moved past the windows in streaks of light. Nobody spoke for almost a minute. Then Ethan looked toward me. "How old are you?" 10. He nodded slowly. Another silence followed. The oxygen machine continued its steady rhythm. A small monitor beeped every few seconds. The sounds became part of the night. "You stayed very calm," he finally said. I looked down at my shoes. "Mom says panic wastes time." The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. "Your mother sounds practical. She helps people." I answered quickly. "Even when she is tired." That seemed to land somewhere deep inside him. He turned toward the dark window. The city lights reflected across the glass. Another mini hook appeared when his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and ignored the call. Then another came. He ignored that one too. At the hospital, bright emergency lights washed everything pale white. Nurses moved through automatic doors. Stretchers rolled across polished floors. The air smelled like disinfectant and fresh coffee. My mom disappeared behind double doors with a medical team. 1 second she was there. The next she was gone. The empty hallway suddenly felt enormous. I sat in a blue plastic chair. My backpack rested beside me. Ethan stood near the nurse's station speaking quietly with someone. He could have left. The gala was still happening. Hundreds of guests were waiting for him. Yet he stayed. A nurse approached with a clipboard. "Are you here alone?" she asked me gently. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Before the silence became uncomfortable, Ethan stepped forward. "She is not alone." The nurse nodded and continued her questions. I answered as best I could. Address. Emergency contacts. Medical history. Some answers I knew. Others belonged to my mom. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 10 minutes. 20. 30. The waiting room slowly emptied. Television screens played muted news broadcasts nobody watched. Then something unexpected happened. A volunteer brought me a blanket. "Someone asked us to make sure you had this." She pointed toward Ethan. He was standing near a window overlooking the ambulance entrance. His shoulders looked heavier now. Almost distracted. Another small hook. Another unanswered question. I wrapped the blanket around myself. The fabric smelled like laundry soap. Warmth spread through my hands. Near midnight, a nurse emerged from behind the double doors carrying a clear plastic bag. Personal belongings. She stopped beside the counter and placed it down. My mom's wallet. Her keys. Her phone charger. Then a photograph slipped from the top of the pile and fluttered onto the floor. Ethan bent to pick it up before anyone else noticed. The second he saw the image, all color drained from his face. He looked as though he had seen a ghost. Then he whispered a name that was not my mother's. The name hung in the air for only a second. It still changed everything. Ethan stared at the photograph as if it had reached across 20 years and grabbed him by the collar. The nurse glanced at him. "Do you know her?" He looked up too quickly. "No," the answer came fast. Too fast. Then he carefully placed the photograph back into the plastic bag. I could not see the picture clearly from my chair. I only caught a glimpse of faded colors and a younger woman standing beside an old brick building. Ethan stepped away from the counter and moved toward the window again. His reflection floated across the dark glass. Outside, an ambulance pulled away from the emergency entrance. Rain had started falling lightly. Tiny drops tapped against the window. The waiting room felt quieter than before. Another hook settled into place. Ethan kept looking at the photograph even after he put it away. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. The wall clock continued its slow march forward. My stomach growled. I ignored it. A cleaning cart rolled through the hallway. The smell of disinfectant drifted across the room. A television switched to overnight weather forecasts. Nobody watched. Ethan finally returned from the window. He sat 2 chairs away from me. How long has your mother worked for that clinic? I shrugged. A long time. Years? Since before I can remember. He nodded slowly. Another pause followed. Does she ever talk about her family? The question felt different from the others. More careful. Not much. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders. Just my grandmother sometimes. Ethan looked down at his hands. His fingers tightened slightly. And your grandfather? I never met him. His eyes lifted toward me. Another small reaction. Another piece of something hidden. The double doors opened. A nurse stepped into the waiting room. Both of us stood immediately. She is stable, the nurse said. The words seemed to release the air from the room. She is resting now. My knees nearly gave out from relief. The nurse smiled gently. She will need monitoring, but she is awake. Awake. That single word warmed the cold hospital hallway. Ethan thanked the nurse before I could. She handed him a visitor badge without even asking. Apparently everyone in the hospital recognized him. He glanced at the badge, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. Can we see her? The nurse nodded. Briefly. We followed her through a maze of corridors. Bright lights hummed overhead. Rubber saws squeaked against polished floors. Machines beeped softly from nearby rooms. The hospital seemed to breathe through wires and monitors. We stopped outside room 214. The nurse opened the door quietly. My mom lay against a raised hospital bed. Oxygen tubing rested beneath her nose. Her eyes were open. Tired. Heavy. But open. Mom. I rushed forward and grabbed her hand. She smiled weakly. Hey, baby. Her voice sounded rough. You scared me. I know. Her fingers squeezed mine. The room fell into a gentle silence. Then her eyes moved past me. They landed on Ethan. Everything changed. The small smile disappeared instantly. Not from fear. Recognition. Deep recognition. She looked at him the same way he had looked at the photograph. The air inside the room seemed to stop moving. Ethan took one slow step forward. Monica. She stared at him for several seconds. What are you doing here? Her voice remained calm. That somehow made the question sharper. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Another hook. Another missing piece. My mother looked toward the door. Then back at him. You should not be here. Ethan did not leave. He looked as though he had been waiting years to hear that voice again. Then Monica noticed the plastic belongings bag sitting beside the bed, and her eyes locked onto the photograph inside. My mother's eyes never left the photograph. The hospital monitor continued its steady rhythm beside her bed. Soft green lines moved across the screen. Rain tapped lightly against the window. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Monica reached toward the plastic bag. Her fingers moved slowly. Carefully. She pulled the photograph free and held it in front of her. The image looked old. The corners were worn white. A younger version of my mother stood beside an older woman in front of a small brick building. Ethan stared at it. You kept it. His voice was quiet. My mother looked up. Some people keep reminders. Another silence settled over the room. A nurse passed in the hallway outside. Wheels rattled across tile floors. Somewhere down the corridor a phone rang twice. Then stopped. Ethan glanced toward me before looking back at Monica. I did not know what happened. My mother's expression did not change. That is what everyone says. The words landed heavily. Not loud. Not angry. Just tired. I looked between them. Neither seemed surprised to see the other. That bothered me more than anything. Another hook settled into my chest. How did they know each other? Ethan pulled a chair closer to the bed. He did not sit immediately. When I saw the picture, I recognized your mother. Monica lowered her eyes toward the photograph. Most people forgot her years ago. I did not. You disappeared. Ethan absorbed that without arguing. The room grew quiet again. The oxygen machine released a soft hiss. My mother folded the photograph and placed it carefully on the blanket. Aaliyah. She looked at me. Would you get some water? I knew what she was doing. She wanted privacy. But curiosity glued me to the chair. Mom, please. I stood reluctantly. The hallway outside felt colder than before. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I stopped near the water station just beyond the door. Not far enough to leave. Close enough to hear pieces of the conversation through the narrow opening. You knew my mother, Monica said. Yes. Then you know exactly what happened. Another pause. I know part of it. Only part. Her laugh carried no humor. That sounds familiar. I filled a paper cup slowly. Water splashed against the sides. Inside the room, Ethan finally sat down. I found out about the building years later. Building. The word caught my attention. Nobody told me the truth. Monica looked toward the ceiling for a moment. The truth never made money. Another small hook. Another missing piece. The conversation continued. After it closed, Ethan said, I tried to find records. And most of them were gone. Monica nodded as though she expected that answer. Convenient. A cart rolled down the hallway. The nurse from earlier smiled at me as she passed. I smiled back automatically. My attention never left the room. Ethan leaned forward slightly. The caller on your phone. Monica's eyes narrowed. What about it? The name. He hesitated. I never expected to see it again. Monica became very still. The monitor continued beeping. One sound every few seconds. You should not be looking through my phone. I was not. Then why does that name matter? Ethan looked down. Because I have been searching for him too. My grip tightened around the paper cup. Him. Another person. Another piece of a story nobody wanted to explain. Monica stared at Ethan for several long seconds. Then something shifted in her face. Not trust. Not forgiveness. Recognition of a different kind. As though she suddenly understood why he had stayed. Outside the room, thunder rolled softly beyond the hospital windows. Inside, neither of them looked away. Then Monica asked a question that made Ethan's face go completely still. How much do you know about what your father did? The question settled over the room like a weight. Even the monitor beside the bed seemed louder afterward. Beep. Pause. Beep. Ethan looked down at the floor for several seconds. Rain streaked across the hospital window behind him. The city lights outside blurred into long bands of gold and white. My mother waited. She did not repeat the question. She did not need to. Ethan finally exhaled. Not enough. His voice sounded different now. Less certain. I knew there was a property dispute. Monica laughed softly. The sound carried more sadness than amusement. A property dispute. She looked toward me. Then back at him. That building was a community clinic. Another piece slid into place. My mother ran it. Ethan remained silent. Monica continued. People came there when nobody else would help them. Her fingers brushed the edge of the photograph. Seniors. Single parents. Families without transportation. Another hook emerged. The old brick building was more than a building. Then one morning, Monica said, everything changed. The oxygen machine released another quiet hiss. Ethan's eyes stayed fixed on her. The records I found were incomplete. Because someone made sure they were. The answer came immediately. No hesitation. No anger. Just certainty. I moved closer to the bed. Nobody asked me to leave this time. Grandma worked there. I asked. My mother's expression softened slightly. Every day. I had heard stories before. Small stories. Never this one. Why did it close? Monica looked at Ethan. Not me. Because powerful people wanted the land underneath it. The room became silent again. Ethan rubbed his hands together slowly. A habit, maybe. Or nerves. My father signed the acquisition. Monica nodded once. Your father did more than that. Another hook. Another. Door opening. A nurse entered briefly to check a monitor. She adjusted a wire and left. The interruption lasted less than a minute. Still, nobody spoke until the door clicked shut again. Ethan stared at the photograph. I was 22. I know. I was not involved. Monica held his gaze. That does not mean you were not connected. The words landed quietly. They still hit hard. Outside the room, a cart rolled down the hallway. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed softly. Life continued throughout the hospital. Inside room 214, everything felt suspended. Ethan leaned forward. The caller on your phone. Monica's eyes narrowed again. What about him? He worked there too, did he not? Her expression changed instantly. Not dramatically. Just enough. You remember him? Ethan nodded. I remember Marcus Reed. The name settled into the room. Another missing piece suddenly had a shape. Marcus Reed. The man from the phone. He disappeared after the closure, Ethan continued. At least that is what everyone said. Monica looked toward the rain-covered window. Marcus never disappeared. Ethan sat back slightly. Surprise crossed his face. A real reaction this time. Then where is he? Monica hesitated. For the first time all night, she seemed uncertain. Not afraid. Careful. That depends on who is asking. Ethan absorbed that answer. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. My backpack rested beside the chair. The blanket slipped from my shoulders. Nobody noticed. The room had become about something much larger than a medical emergency. Something older. Something unfinished. Ethan slowly stood and walked toward the window. His reflection looked older than before. Tired. The HOA permit account, he said quietly. The one flagged today. Monica looked at him. What about it? He turned around. Someone used executive authorization. The room went completely still. Even I understood what that meant. The permit had not been blocked by accident. Somebody had targeted it. Somebody knew exactly who Monica Brooks was. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. A notification glowed on the screen. He stared at it for several long seconds. Then his face hardened. And I think I just found out who. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. The glow from the screen reflected across the hospital window. Rain continued sliding down the glass in thin silver lines. Nobody spoke at first. The silence carried its own weight. "Who?" Monica finally asked. Ethan looked toward her. "Richard Voss." The name meant nothing to me. It meant everything to my mother. Her shoulders stiffened immediately. Another hook. Another hidden connection. "He still works for the company?" she asked. "Not directly." Ethan slipped the phone into his pocket. "But he oversees several affiliated property groups." Monica gave a short nod. "Of course he does." The monitor beside her bed continued its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. I looked between them. "Who is Richard Voss?" Neither answered right away. Ethan walked back to the chair and sat down. "Years ago, he worked under my father." Monica looked toward the ceiling. "He handled acquisitions." Ethan nodded. "And records." That single word seemed important. More important than either wanted to explain. A nurse entered with medication and checked a chart. The interruption lasted less than a minute. Still, nobody continued until the door closed again. The room felt smaller now. The rain sounded louder. Monica folded her hands on top of the blanket. The clinic closure was supposed to disappear into paperwork. Ethan stared at the floor. That is exactly what happened. For most people. Another hook settled into place. Not for everyone. My mother reached toward the photograph again. Her fingers brushed the faded image of the old building. My mother spent 15 years there. Her voice softened slightly. She knew every family who walked through those doors. Ethan listened without interrupting. When it closed, people lost more than a clinic. She looked toward me. Some lost transportation. Some lost medication support. Some lost the only place that remembered their names. The words hung in the air. Ethan swallowed hard. I never knew the full impact. Monica met his eyes. That does not surprise me. He accepted the answer. No argument. No defense. Just acceptance. Another small shift happened inside the room. Not forgiveness. Something quieter. Honesty. My stomach growled again. This time Monica heard it. Despite everything, she smiled faintly. Have you eaten? I shook my head. Ethan immediately stood. I will get food. You do not have to, Monica said. I know. He paused near the door. I want to. A few minutes later he returned carrying a sandwich, fruit cup, and a carton of milk from the overnight cafe. Nothing expensive. Nothing impressive. Just food. Another small action. Another detail that mattered. I thanked him and began eating. The sandwich was cold. It still tasted amazing. While I ate, Ethan opened his phone again. His expression tightened as he reviewed something on the screen. The permit block happened at 4:32 this afternoon. Monica looked up. Today? Yes. That is not a coincidence. Ethan nodded. No. It is not. Another hook. The timing was too precise. Too deliberate. Someone accessed your permit file manually. Monica stared out at the rain-covered city lights. Then somebody has been watching. The room fell silent again. Even I understood what she meant. The clinic permit. The blocked gate. The executive authorization. None of it felt random anymore. Ethan slowly locked his phone. Richard Voss is attending a board meeting tomorrow morning. Monica looked at him carefully. And I am going to ask him some questions. Thunder rolled softly in the distance. The sound seemed to travel through the building itself. Monica studied him for several seconds. Then she asked the question that stopped him cold. Are you prepared if the answers lead back to your own family? Monica's question stayed in the room long after she asked it. Ethan did not answer immediately. Rain continued sliding down the hospital window. The monitor beside the bed kept its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. I sat quietly with the half-finished sandwich in my hands. Nobody seemed hungry anymore. Ethan finally looked at my mother. If the truth leads back to my family, then it leads back to my family. His voice was calm. Not defensive. Just tired. Monica studied him for several seconds. Then she looked away. Another. Small silence settled between them. It felt different from the others. Less sharp. More careful. A nurse entered to check vital signs. She smiled at me and adjusted a monitor wire. The interruption lasted only a minute. Once the door closed again, Ethan pulled his phone from his pocket. There is something else. Another hook. He opened a file on the screen. His thumb moved across several pages. After leaving the gala, I requested access to archived property records. Monica's eyes narrowed slightly. Tonight? While waiting here. He turned the screen toward her. Most of the files are gone. Monica gave a slow nod. That does not surprise me. Ethan continued scrolling. But one document survived. I leaned forward without meaning to. The glow from the screen reflected across my mother's blanket. Ethan stopped on a scanned page. Old. Faded. Nearly impossible to read. What is it? I asked. He hesitated. A transfer authorization. Monica's expression hardened immediately. Signed by Richard. Ethan shook his head. No, the answer changed the room. Even I felt it. Another hook. Another layer beneath the story. Ethan zoomed in on the signature line. It was signed by my father. Nobody spoke. The rain tapped softly against the glass. A distant announcement echoed through the hallway outside. My mother closed her eyes briefly. Not from shock. More like confirmation. I told you, she said quietly. The decision did not happen in the shadows. Ethan looked down at the screen. There is more. He enlarged another section of the document. The clinic property was not listed as vacant land. Monica stared at him. Of course it was not. It was listed as an active community healthcare center. Another silence. Longer this time. Ethan swallowed. That means everyone reviewing the file knew exactly what was there. The words hung heavily in the room. I looked at my mother. She did not seem surprised. Just sad. People always knew, she said. Knowing was never the problem. Another hook settled into place. Ethan sat back in his chair. For the first time all night, he looked genuinely shaken. Not because of a rumor. Not because of a suspicion. Because he was staring. At proof. There is something handwritten in the margin, he said. Monica immediately looked up. What does it say? Ethan stared at the faded note. Expedite clearance. Community objections not material. The room went completely silent. Even the rain seemed quieter. My mother lowered her gaze toward the blanket. Her fingers tightened around the photograph. That sounds like him. Ethan looked at her carefully. You knew my father well? Monica laughed softly. No, she paused. But I knew the damage he left behind. The answer landed harder than any accusation. Ethan did not argue. He did not defend his father. He simply sat there absorbing it. Minutes passed. The clock on the wall crept forward. Then Ethan's phone vibrated. Once. Twice. 3 times. He glanced at the screen. His face changed immediately. Another hook. Stronger this time. What is it? Monica asked. Ethan slowly stood from the chair. Someone just accessed the same archive I am viewing. The room froze. He looked from the screen to Monica. Then back again. And whoever it is knows I opened the file. The notification remained on Ethan's screen. Nobody moved. The monitor beside my mother's bed continued its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. Rain slid down the hospital window in silver lines. Ethan looked at the access log again. Then again. As if reading it a second time might change what it said. It did not. The archive recorded a second login 3 minutes ago, he said quietly. Monica watched him carefully. Can you see who it was? Ethan shook his head. The account is masked. Another hook. Somebody wanted to stay invisible. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders. The room suddenly felt colder. Could it be Richard? I asked. Ethan looked toward me. Maybe. He paused. Or someone protecting him. The words settled heavily into the room. My mother leaned back against the pillow. She looked exhausted. The hospital light above her bed cast a pale glow across her face. People protected that decision for years, she said. Why stop now? Ethan looked down at the phone. Because now someone is looking. Another silence followed. The rain continued. A distant elevator bell sounded. Somewhere down the hallway. Small noises. Ordinary noises. Yet everything felt different. Ethan opened another file. Rows of dates appeared on the screen. Property transfers. Corporate names. Approval records. He scrolled slowly. His expression tightened with every page. What is it? Monica asked. Ethan exhaled through his nose. The clinic land changed ownership 3 times in 18 months. Monica frowned. 3 times. On paper. Another hook. The answer clearly bothered him. The final company does not exist anymore. My mother gave a short, humorless laugh. That sounds familiar too. Ethan nodded. Temporary corporations. Shell entities. Layers. He stared at the screen. Someone worked very hard to make the trail difficult to follow. I watched him scroll. Numbers. Names. Dates. They meant little to me. But they clearly meant something to him. The billionaire who had arrived at a gala now looked like a man trying to solve a puzzle he never expected to find. Another notification appeared. This time Ethan's phone vibrated twice. He immediately opened it. His eyes narrowed. What happened? Monica asked. Ethan turned the screen toward her. A file was deleted. The room went silent again. Just now. 30 seconds ago. Another hook. Whoever was watching had started moving. Monica stared at the screen. Can they erase everything? Ethan considered the question. Not everything. He paused. But they can try. The monitor beeped steadily beside the bed. My mother closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, she looked older somehow. Not weaker. Just tired of carrying something for too long. My mother warned me, she said softly. Ethan looked up. About what? Monica's fingers brushed the edge of the photograph. She said the truth survives longer than paperwork. The words hung in the room. Even Ethan seemed affected by them. He lowered the phone slowly. Another piece clicked into place. This story was never only about land. Never only about money. It was about people who had been erased from a record and remembered by those left behind. The hallway outside grew quieter as the night deepened. Nurses spoke in softer voices. The smell of coffee drifted past the doorway. Somewhere nearby, a machine hummed steadily. Ethan stood and walked toward the window. City lights shimmered through the rain. "There is one thing I still do not understand," he said. Monica looked at him. "What?" Ethan turned around. "Why was your permit targeted today of all days?" The question lingered. My mother did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the belongings bag on the chair. Toward the photograph. Toward the phone. Then her expression changed. Not fear. Realization. Slow and unmistakable. Ethan noticed it too. "Monica," he said carefully. "What did you remember?" She looked directly at him. Then she spoke 5 words that made the entire night feel different. "Marcus called me yesterday morning. Marcus called me yesterday morning." The words lingered in the room long after my mother spoke them. The monitor beside her bed continued its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. Rain tapped softly against the window. Ethan remained standing near the glass. "What did he say?" he asked. My mother looked down at the photograph in her hands. "Not much. Another hook. But enough." Ethan waited. He did not rush her. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, he seemed to understand that some stories only moved when they were ready. My mother took a slow breath. Marcus said he finally found something. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Records. Evidence. The room fell quiet again. I sat forward in my chair. Even I could feel the importance of that word. Evidence. Something real. Something that survived. My mother continued. He told me there were documents nobody knew existed. Ethan immediately reached for his phone. "Where are they now?" Monica shook her head. He would not say over the phone. Another hook settled into place. "Why not?" Ethan asked. "Because he believed someone was watching." Rain slid down the glass behind him. The city lights shimmered through the water. Nothing about the night felt ordinary anymore. My mother adjusted the blanket over her lap. Marcus sounded nervous. "Did he mention Richard Voss?" Ethan asked. "No, my father." "No," another pause. "But he said something strange before he hung up." Ethan leaned slightly forward. "What?" My mother stared toward the ceiling for a second. "He said the wrong people finally realized what was missing." The words seemed to drain the warmth from the room. Ethan slowly lowered himself back into the chair. His phone remained in his hand. The screen glowed faintly. "That explains the permit block." My mother nodded. "That is what I think." Another piece clicked into place. Someone had not targeted her because of who she was today. They had targeted her because of what she might know. The realization settled heavily over all of us. A nurse stepped into the room and checked a chart. She smiled politely before leaving. The brief interruption gave nobody relief. As soon as the door closed, the tension returned. Ethan opened the archive records again. He studied the screen for several moments. "The file deletion happened shortly after your call with Marcus." My mother looked at him. "How shortly?" "Less than 24 hours. Another hook." The timing felt impossible to ignore. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Whoever is behind this became active after Marcus reached out." My mother looked toward the rain-dark window. Then Marcus was right. Silence followed. The hospital seemed quieter now. Overnight staff moved through the halls in soft footsteps. A coffee machine hummed somewhere in the distance. Life continued beyond room 214. Inside the room, the past felt very close. Ethan suddenly stopped scrolling. His eyes locked onto something on the screen. Another hook. "What is it?" my mother asked. Ethan looked up slowly. "I found a reference number." "For what?" He turned the screen toward her. "A storage file." My mother's expression changed immediately. Not fear. Recognition. Deep recognition. "That cannot be." Ethan pointed to the record. "It was never deleted." My mother's fingers tightened around the photograph. "Marcus used to keep duplicate copies off-site." Ethan stared at her. Then this storage file might still exist. The possibility seemed to electrify the room. For the first time all night, hope appeared. Small. Fragile. But real. Ethan stood again and slipped the phone into his pocket. "The board meeting can wait." My mother looked at him carefully. "Where are you going?" He glanced toward the door. Then back at the photograph resting in her hands. "To find out what Marcus was trying to protect." The room stayed quiet after Ethan left. The door clicked shut behind him. The sound seemed louder than it should have. Rain continued tapping against the hospital window. The monitor beside my mother's bed kept its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. I watched the door for several seconds. Part of me expected him to come back immediately. He did not. My mother rested her head against the pillow and closed her eyes. Not to sleep. Just to think. I could tell the difference. "Do you trust him?" I asked softly. Her eyes opened again. The question hung between us. "I do not know yet," she said. Honest answer. Nothing more. I looked down at the photograph in her hands. "He seems different." A faint smile touched her face. People can be different and still carry old mistakes. Another hook settled quietly into my mind. Outside the room, a nurse pushed a cart down the hallway. The wheels rattled softly across the floor. Hospital lights reflected off polished tile. Everything felt calm for the first time all night. Almost calm. My mother's phone suddenly vibrated on the bedside table. Both of us looked at it. One vibration. Then another. My mother reached for it carefully. The screen lit up. Unknown number. Her expression changed immediately. Not fear. Attention. She answered. "Hello." I could only hear her side of the conversation. "Yes." A pause. "Who is this?" Another pause. Then she sat up straighter. "Are you sure?" The monitor beeped a little faster. I leaned forward. "What happened?" I whispered. She raised one finger gently, asking me to wait. "When?" she asked into the phone. Silence followed. Then she closed her eyes briefly. "Thank you for telling me." The call ended. The room felt different again. Charged. Like the moment before a storm arrives. "Mom." She looked at me. That was someone from the storage company. Another hook. The place Marcus used. She nodded. The file still exists. Relief crossed her face for the first time all night. Real relief. Not complete. But real. Then it disappeared just as quickly. But there is a problem. My stomach tightened. What problem? She looked toward the rain-covered window. Someone tried to access it tonight. The words landed heavily. Another piece of the puzzle moving at the same time we were. Did they get it? I asked. My mother shook her head. No, a small breath escaped me. Then it is okay. Not yet. She looked at the photograph again. It means we are not the only ones searching. The room fell quiet. I thought about Ethan driving through the rain. I thought about Marcus. About the clinic. About a building I had never seen but somehow felt connected to. So many people chasing the same secret. A knock sounded at the door. Soft. Unexpected. My mother looked up. So did I. A nurse stepped inside carrying a folded piece of paper. "This was left for you downstairs," she said. "A man dropped it off about 20 minutes ago." My mother accepted the note slowly. The nurse left. The door closed. We stared at the folded paper together. No name. No envelope. Nothing. My mother opened it carefully. Her eyes moved across the message. Then all the color left her face. I had not seen that look before. Not even tonight. "Mom," I whispered. "What does it say?" She looked toward the door Ethan had walked through and answered with only 4 words. "He is already there. He is already there." The words echoed inside the room. My mother kept staring at the note. The paper trembled slightly between her fingers. Rain continued tapping against the hospital window. The monitor beside her bed maintained its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. I looked at the note. "Who is already there?" My mother swallowed. "Ethan." Another hook settled immediately. I stood from the chair. "At the storage place?" She nodded once. Her eyes never left the message. Written beneath the warning was an address. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Just a location and a warning that arrived too late. My mother's phone vibrated again. Both of us jumped slightly. The screen lit up. "Ethan Caldwell." She answered immediately. "Ethan." Static crackled for a second. Then his voice came through. Calm. Controlled. But different. "I found the storage unit." My mother closed her eyes briefly. Relief and worry seemed to collide at the same time. "Are you all right?" "Yes." A short pause followed. "But you need to hear this." Another hook. The hospital room suddenly felt too small. Ethan continued. Marcus was telling the truth. My mother gripped the phone tighter. "What did you find?" Papers rustled on the other end of the call. I could hear rain and distant traffic behind his voice. "Records. Correspondence. Property files." He paused. "An assigned statement." The monitor beside the bed seemed louder again. Beep. Pause. Beep. My mother looked toward the photograph resting on her blanket. "From Marcus?" "No." Another silence. "From your mother?" The room froze. My mother's eyes widened. For the first time all night, genuine shock crossed her face. "That is impossible." I thought so too. More papers shifted. "But I am holding it." My mother leaned back against the pillow. She looked suddenly overwhelmed. Not by fear. By memory. She wrote everything down, Ethan said quietly. Names. Dates. Meetings. Another hook. Years of missing pieces were beginning to surface. "There is more." Ethan's voice softened. "Your mother documented the closure process from beginning to end." My mother covered her mouth with one hand. Tears appeared in her eyes but never fell. She knew nobody would believe her, she whispered. Ethan answered immediately. She made sure somebody eventually could. The words settled gently into the room. Even I felt their weight. Outside the hospital window, the rain had started slowing. The city lights looked clearer now. Less distorted. Ethan continued reading. The statement identifies every person involved. My mother's eyes closed again. Including Richard? Yes. My father? Ethan hesitated. Yes. Another silence followed. But this one felt different. Not hopeless. Final. The truth was no longer hiding behind rumors or missing records. It existed. It survived. My mother slowly lowered her hand. Then it is over. Ethan's answer came softly. No, another hook. What do you mean? Ethan exhaled. Because the last page is not about the clinic. My mother frowned. What is it about? Rainwater dripped from somewhere outside his location. A car passed in the distance. Then Ethan spoke the sentence that changed everything again. The final page explains why Marcus stayed hidden for 20 years. My mother sat upright despite the nurse's instructions to rest. Why? Ethan looked at something in the file. I could hear paper turning. Then complete silence. When he finally spoke again, his voice carried something I had not heard before. Astonishment. Because he was protecting something your mother left behind. The line went silent after Ethan's words. My mother held the phone against her ear but did not speak. The monitor beside her bed continued its steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. Outside the window, the rain had almost stopped. The city lights looked sharper now. Clearer. As if the storm itself was finally moving on. What did she leave behind? My mother asked quietly. Papers shifted on Ethan's end of the call. Then came a sound that surprised all of us. He laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. Because he could not quite believe what he was seeing. Hope, he said. Another silence filled the room. Ethan. My mother's voice trembled slightly. Tell me. He exhaled slowly. Your mother did not spend her final years collecting evidence to punish people. He paused. She spent them building something. Another hook settled into place. I leaned forward in my chair. My mother closed her eyes. Ethan continued. The final documents include plans for a new community health center. The room froze. What? My mother whispered. She knew the clinic might never return. So she created a foundation structure instead. More pages turned. The funding was placed into a protected trust. My mother covered her mouth. Tears finally escaped her eyes. No, Ethan's voice softened. Yes. The monitor continued its gentle rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. Marcus protected the records because he was protecting the trust. My mother stared toward the dark window. 20 years seemed to pass across her face in a single moment. How much? She asked. Ethan looked through the papers. Enough. Another small laugh escaped him. More. Than enough. I watched my mother's shoulders rise and fall with a long breath. Not a breath of grief. Relief. Deep relief. The kind that arrives after carrying something for too long. Ethan continued reading. There is one condition. My mother smiled faintly through her tears. There always is. The foundation must be operated by someone from the original community. The smile disappeared. She looked stunned again. My mother wrote that. Word for word. Another pause followed. Then Ethan added something unexpected. She also named a successor. My mother sat completely still. Who? Papers rustled one final time. Ethan answered gently. You. The room became perfectly quiet. Even the hallway outside seemed distant. My mother lowered her gaze toward the photograph resting on her blanket. The picture of the clinic. The picture she had carried all these years. She trusted me, she whispered. She did. Ethan's answer came without hesitation. A few moments passed before he spoke again. There is something else. Another hook. What now? My mother asked. Ethan smiled. I could hear it in his voice. The trust documents become active tomorrow morning. My mother laughed softly through her tears. The sound filled the room with warmth. After 20 years. After 20 years. The city lights shimmered beyond the glass. The storm clouds were breaking apart. Somewhere below, traffic moved through wet streets. Life continued. Forward. Always forward. My mother looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, there was no fear in her eyes. No uncertainty. Only possibility. Looks like we have work to do, she said. I smiled. A lot of work. Ethan remained silent for a second. Then he spoke one final sentence. Your mother changed more lives than she ever knew. Nobody answered right away. We did not need to. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. The rain stopped completely. And as the first hint of morning touched the edge of the city skyline, it finally felt like something lost had found its way home.